The Galactic Coalition's monitoring station floated in the cold silence of space, its scanners sweeping the vast emptiness for any signs of movement. For years, this sector had been quiet. Nothing more than routine patrols and minor skirmishes between rival factions. But today, something was different. Lieutenant Varric sat at his console, his sharp eyes lazily scanning the holographic display in front of him. It was just another ordinary shift. He leaned back, stretching his scaled arms when suddenly, a red alert flashed on the screen. Unidentified vessel detected, the automated system announced in a calm but urgent tone. Varric's heart pounded as he quickly adjusted the sensors. The data made no sense. A single warship had just entered the system, fast, silent, and massive. "That's impossible," he muttered. "Nothing that big moves without being detected earlier." Commander Celtrax, a towering reptilian officer, stormed into the control room, his heavy footsteps echoing against the metal floor. "Report," he barked. Varric swallowed hard and pointed to the screen. "Sir, we have an incoming vessel. It's unlike anything we've seen before. No known signature, no transmissions, just pure silence." Celtrax narrowed his yellow eyes. "Zoom in. Let's see what we're dealing with." The screen adjusted, showing a shadow moving through space. It was sleek, dark, and had an eerie presence, almost as if the void itself had shaped into a war machine. Then the system finally processed the incoming data. The room fell silent as a single word appeared on the display. "Human." A cold shiver ran through the entire crew. Celtrax's claws tightened around the console. "Confirm that reading," he demanded, his voice shaking slightly. Varric hesitated, then pressed a few commands. The results came back the same. A human warship. "This can't be right," Varric whispered. "Humans don't operate in this sector. They have no interest in our conflicts. Why would they send a warship here?" Celtrax didn't answer. He had heard stories, whispers of what human warships could do. The last time a single human battleship was sighted in a war zone, an entire armada was wiped out before they could even call for reinforcements. "Send a warning to High Command," Celtrax ordered, his voice grave. "Tell them we may have a serious problem." Before Varric could comply, another alert blared across the room. The human warship had just changed course. It was now headed directly toward them. The control room erupted into chaos. Officers shouted commands, alarm systems wailed, and defensive measures were activated. But deep down, Celtrax knew the truth. If the humans had come for war, there was nothing they could do to stop them. The war room was in chaos. Sirens blared, officers barked orders, and the station's automated defenses powered up, targeting the incoming vessel. But despite all the preparations, a deep sense of unease hung in the air. Lieutenant Varric's hands trembled as he worked the controls. The data was terrifying. The human warship was moving too fast, too precisely. It was closing the distance in a way no other ship had ever done before. "Commander," Varric said, his voice tight with fear, "our weapons are locking on, but the system is struggling to get a full read. It's like it's jamming our sensors without even trying." Commander Celtrax bared his fangs in frustration. He had fought many battles, seen countless warships in his lifetime. But this was something else. "How long until it reaches us?" he asked. Varric checked the readings. Less than 3 minutes. A heavy silence filled the room. 3 minutes was nothing. In 3 minutes, most warships would still be adjusting their shields or calibrating their targeting systems. But this human vessel, it was already in attack range. "Open a comms channel," Celtrax ordered. "We need to know why they're here." Varric's claws danced over the controls, opening all frequencies. "This is Commander Celtrax of the Galactic Coalition monitoring station," he announced, trying to keep his voice steady. "You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." "Nothing." "Repeat, this is a restricted." A single reply came through. A deep, calm voice, perfectly clear. "Stand down." Just 2 words, but they carried the weight of 1,000 battles. The crew exchanged nervous glances. No threats, no demands, just a simple command, as if the humans already knew what would happen next. Xeltrax growled. They think they can intimidate us. Power up the ion cannons. Varric hesitated. Sir, are you sure? This is a human warship. I said power them up. The station's external cannons hummed to life, their targeting systems locking onto the rapidly approaching ship. Red warning lights flashed across the station, signaling full combat readiness. Then, something terrifying happened. The human ship vanished. One moment, it was closing in. The next, it was gone from the sensors. Panic erupted. Officers scrambled to find an explanation. Did it cloak? Did we lose power? Where did it go? Varric's screen flickered. A single warning message appeared. They're here. Xeltrax barely had time to react before the entire station shook violently. The crew was thrown to the floor as an overwhelming force surged through the station's hull. It wasn't a direct hit. It was something far worse. The human warship had just arrived. Not outside the station. Above it. Hovering at an impossible distance, so close that its shadow blocked out the nearby stars. Its dark, armored hull loomed over them like a silent predator, watching, waiting. For the first time in his life, Commander Xeltrax felt true fear. The Galactic Coalition monitoring station had never faced anything like this. A warship appearing out of nowhere, bypassing all defenses, and now looming over them like an executioner's blade. Commander Xeltrax forced himself to stand, his claws gripping the console as he stared at the colossal human vessel. It wasn't firing. It wasn't moving. It was just waiting. Silence filled the war room. No one dared to speak. Then the human's voice came through again. Last chance. Stand down. 2 words. Calm, direct, and absolute. Lieutenant Varric swallowed hard. Commander, if we fire now, they'll what? Xeltrax snapped. His voice was sharp, but inside, doubt gnawed at him. He had commanded fleets, crushed rebellions, and fought against some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. But this, he had never encountered a single warship that could freeze an entire station into paralyzed silence. Xeltrax turned to his officers. Charge the main disruptor cannon. Varric's eyes widened. Sir, we don't even know what they're capable of. That's exactly why we strike first, Xeltrax growled. A new signal appeared, a direct transmission from the human ship. They were requesting a face-to-face communication. Varric hesitated before speaking. Commander, they want to talk. Xeltrax narrowed his eyes. This was strange. Humans were known for their unpredictable nature, their chaotic battle strategies, their terrifying ability to never surrender. And yet, this one wanted to talk. Xeltrax took a deep breath, patched them through. The screen flickered to life, and for the first time, they saw who they were dealing with. The lone human stood on the other side of the transmission. A war captain. His face was calm. No fear, no arrogance, just quiet confidence. His uniform was plain, but decorated with medals that Xeltrax couldn't understand. But what caught everyone's attention was his eyes. Cold, unshaken, like a predator staring at its prey. The human spoke. If you raise your weapons, we will erase you from this sector. Not a threat, not a boast, a fact. The war room fell into stunned silence. Xeltrax could feel every officer staring at him, waiting for his command. He clenched his jaw. His entire career had been built on strength, on dominance. But this time, he wasn't sure they could win. And that terrified him. Xeltrax's claws dug into the control panel as he stared at the human on the screen. The war room was dead silent. No one dared to move. The human war captain tilted his head slightly, waiting, unbothered, unafraid. Zeltrax had faced countless enemies, but this was different. The station's defense systems were still locked onto the human warship, but for some reason, his instincts screamed at him, "Don't do it." Varric's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, what do we do?" Zeltrax took a deep breath. He had to choose. Attack and risk annihilation, or surrender and lose all authority. He turned back to the human. "You expect me to back down just because you say so?" Zeltrax hissed, trying to regain control of the situation. The human's expression didn't change. "No, I expect you to make a choice that won't get your people killed." Zeltrax's mind raced. Every tactical scenario he could think of ended in disaster. Before he could respond, the warship did something unexpected. It powered down its main weapons. Gasps filled the war room. The officers exchanged nervous glances. What are they doing?" Varric muttered. Zeltrax's grip tightened. "A bluff, a trick, or something worse." The human spoke again. "We don't need weapons to win this fight." The statement sent a chill down Zeltrax's spine. He had always seen humans as unpredictable, but this was calculated dominance. The human leaned forward. "But if you fire first, we will end you before your weapons even charge." Zeltrax could feel every eye in the room on him, waiting for his decision. A warship that wasn't attacking, a crew that didn't even seem tense, and a captain who wasn't making threats, only promises. Zeltrax's throat went dry. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless, and that terrified him more than anything. Zeltrax's claws tapped against the control panel, his mind torn between pride and survival. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to prove the strength of his fleet. But another voice, quieter yet far more dangerous, whispered a simple truth. This was not a battle he could win. The human warship sat motionless, its weapons inactive, its shields barely flickering. It wasn't a show of weakness. It was a message. They didn't need to fire first. Zeltrax's officers shifted uneasily. The silence in the war room was suffocating. The crew was waiting for his decision. Varric's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, they're daring us to make the first move." Zeltrax clenched his jaw. Daring them? No, baiting them. If he ordered an attack, the human ship would respond in ways they couldn't predict. The human captain was still on the screen, waiting, calm, unreadable. It was infuriating. Did this human feel nothing? No fear, no uncertainty. Finally, Zeltrax found his voice. "Your weapons are down," he said, testing the waters. "Yet you sit there as if you've already won." The human didn't blink. "Because we have." A ripple of unease passed through Zeltrax's officers. The human warship had already won, without firing, without moving. Because the moment Zeltrax hesitated, the battle was lost. For a moment, the warlord considered the impossible, standing down. But what would that mean for his reputation, his rule? His claws curled into fists. No, he wouldn't be humiliated by some arrogant deathworlder. "Target their ship," he growled. The weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, do it." Red lights flared across the war room as targeting systems locked onto the human warship. If they wanted to act untouchable, he'd show them how wrong they were. But the moment the first weapon came online, everything changed. A single warning signal flashed on their screens. The human warship had done nothing, but every system on Zeltrax's ship went dark. Weapons offline, shields gone, engines dead. A suffocating silence filled the room as realization set in. The human warship hadn't fired a shot. It hadn't needed to. They had been in control the entire time. Zeltrax's stomach twisted. This wasn't a battle. This was a lesson. And he had just failed the test. Zeltrax's warship floated powerless in the void. His claws dug into the armrests of his command throne, rage and disbelief twisting inside him. How had the humans disabled his entire fleet without firing a single shot? His officers scrambled at their stations, their voices rising in panic. Every system was unresponsive. Weapons, offline. Shields, gone. Engines, dead. Varric's voice was trembling. "Yes, sir. The entire fleet is reporting the same. We've been compromised." Zeltrax's breathing turned shallow. This was impossible. On the screen, the human captain still watched him. Calm, unshaken, completely in control. "This is your only warning," the human finally spoke, his voice devoid of arrogance, yet filled with something far worse. Certainty. "Withdraw your forces. Now." Zeltrax snarled. "You dare command me? Do you think this war is over? I will." The lights flickered. Then, one by one, the Celtran ships began powering back on. Weapons, back online. Shields, active. Engines, operational. Zeltrax's confusion turned to suspicion. The humans had done this on purpose. Shut them down, just long enough to prove a point. Then given them back control. The message was clear. "We could have destroyed you. We chose not to." Zeltrax clenched his fists. If he ordered an attack now, would they shut him down again? Would they let him keep power this time? Or would they end him? His officers watched him, waiting for his command, waiting to see if their leader was a fool or a survivor. The weight of it pressed down on him. He had never faced an enemy like this. Not warriors, not conquerors, but something far worse, monsters who didn't need to fight to win. His throat was dry. The war was over. With a growl, he slammed his fist on the console. "All ships, stand down." Varric hesitated. "Sir." Zeltrax's voice was sharp as a blade. "I said, stand down." Silence. Then the Celtran warships began retreating. On the screen, the human captain gave a small nod. Smart choice. The transmission ended. Zeltrax sagged into his throne, his breath coming in short bursts. He had just lost everything. But he was still alive. For now, the Celtran fleet limped away from the battlefield, their once mighty warships retreating in silent shame. The battle that should have been a decisive victory for them had become a terrifying lesson in human warfare. Zeltrax sat frozen in his command chair, his claws gripping the armrests so tightly they threatened to break. His officers remained silent, no one daring to speak the truth that hung over them all. They had lost without a single shot being fired. The human warship still loomed on the screen, a silent predator watching them go. No pursuit, no final strike. Just watching. Varric cleared his throat hesitantly. "Sir, what do we tell High Command?" Zeltrax exhaled slowly, forcing his claws to unclench. His mind raced, calculating his next move. If he reported the truth, he would be executed. If he lied, he would only delay the inevitable. For the first time in his long military career, he felt truly powerless. "Tell them, we encountered something beyond our understanding." His voice was hollow, his pride shattered. "Tell them humanity is not to be provoked." Varric's eyes widened, but he nodded. There was nothing else to say. The bridge remained silent as the Celtran fleet disappeared into the void, leaving behind the war they had once thought they could win. On the human warship, Captain Reynolds watched the enemy retreat. His expression remained neutral, but there was something in his eyes. Not relief, not pride, but calculation. "Status?" he asked. "All enemy ships have withdrawn," his lieutenant reported. "They won't be coming back anytime soon." Reynolds nodded. "Good." He turned his gaze toward the endless darkness of space. This wasn't the first time an alien empire had tested humanity, and it wouldn't be the last. They would come again, with new strategies, new weapons, new arrogance. And when they did, humanity would be ready.